Good news for Nintendo junkies. The company has agreed to give customers $5 coupons toward game cartridges.
State officials charge that Nintendo bullied retailers. Nintendo says it didn't do anything wrong.
When a company grows to be a dominant force in any industry, it's rare they get there by playing nice. Even if that company's products are directed primarily at children, a company can sometimes choose questionable actions to maintain dominance. Nintendo in the late 80s and early 90s was an immense force in gaming, and even American culture. It became such a staple of the household, it's estimated up to 1/3 of American homes had a Nintendo Entertainment System in their living rooms, earning Nintendo an estimated $4 billion a year. Nintendo's massive financial success may not have all been thanks to its console-selling superstar plumber, but due to some other interesting practices Nintendo executed. In the 1990s, Nintendo dominated 80% of the American video game market. It wasn't long before that tremendous lead drew the scrutinizing eyes of Nintendo's competitors, but also those of the federal government. An investigation started by Congressman Dennis Eckert began a federal inquiry into Nintendo's business practices, resulting in an investigation being passed between several federal agencies before it landed with the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC worked with the Attorney General of several states to build a case against the gaming giant, bringing with it allegations of antitrust violations and price fixing. Nintendo adamantly refused any allegations made against it, but there was growing evidence to the contrary. The book The Console Wars explores a perspective of Tom Kalinske, when he was trying to win over the retail chain Walmart, who was hesitant to carry the Genesis out of fear of retaliation from Nintendo. The purchase agent from Walmart regales Tom with stories of Nintendo lowering shipment numbers, or shipments somehow being frozen if the retailer violated Nintendo's will. Sega eventually won over Walmart through creative marketing, but it was still an uphill battle for Sega, who was struggling to gain more than 10% of the market around that time. Some sources state the failure of the Master System can be contributed to more than just Tonka's failure, but also to Nintendo's aggressive control of retailers. The book Game Over goes into a little more depth with their discussion of Nintendo's behavior in that period.
There were no price wars throughout Nintendo's first years in the marketplace because, it was alleged, Nintendo simply forbade them. Stores tried to discount the NES and the games, but Nintendo pressured them to stop. One chain reportedly lowered the price of the NES by a matter of cents and advertised it in Sunday newspapers, and a competitor called Nintendo, which immediately froze shipments to the company offering the lowered prices. David Sheff, Game Over.
Nintendo built a vast distribution empire in Japan, where it controlled the dissemination of its products all over the country, and they enacted strict controls over that network. This was something that many companies in Japan just accepted as a fact of doing business, and were content to exercise control over what parts of the market they could break into. The United States market didn't have that same luxury for Nintendo. Nintendo used a combination of something called inventory management, a system by which Nintendo kept the supply of their products limited to increased demand. This tactic worked very well and inspired Nintendo to keep up to half its cartridge library inactive and unavailable, to keep market demand high. Nintendo even went as far as to turn retailers against one another, in order to stem off any potential price cuts on Nintendo consoles and games. Nintendo was accused by the New York Attorney General Robert Abrams that they had coerced retailers into keeping the price of the Nintendo Entertainment System at $99.99.
Nintendo entered into illegal agreements with retailers, including some of the nation's largest retail chains, to fix the prices at which Nintendo game consoles are advertised and sold to consumers.
Nintendo is paying a heavy price here today. At the rock bottom, they are paying a minimum of $10 million. They are suffering the stigma of action being taken as a law violator, a lawbreaker.
The Federal Trade Commission investigation happened around a time of anti-Japanese business sentiment. This didn't impact Nintendo's sales much, but it did, however, draw them into the public spotlight, which brought about public scrutiny that Nintendo did not want because of the impact on their company's family-friendly image. The investigation of Nintendo's business practices did bring out voices ready to defend the besieged gaming giant. U.S. Congressman William Danmeyer defended Nintendo for what they had done for the American gaming industry.
The second case, Nintendo, is even more outrageous. Nintendo revived the moribund market for video games through product innovation. Its distribution arrangements appear economically efficient and seem not to have harmed the competition. Here, the FTC appears to penalise an aggressive and innovative competitor for no good cause.
Ultimately, Nintendo settled. They denied any wrongdoing, but the Federal Trade Commission's investigation was becoming something Nintendo could not afford to fight in court if they wanted to protect their wholesome image.
Nintendo has cooperated fully with the FTC and states of New York and Maryland in this matter. While we were emphatic during negotiations and continued to insist that Nintendo has done nothing improper or in violation of antitrust laws, we decided to enter into this comprehensive and nationwide settlement to maintain the goodwill our company enjoys with millions of consumers who play Nintendo games. Howard Lincoln.
The proposed order prohibits Nintendo from fixing, controlling, or maintaining the retail prices at which any dealer may advertise, promote, offer for sale, or sell any Nintendo product. The proposed order prohibits Nintendo from coercing or pressuring any dealer to adhere to any resale price, and from securing or attempting to secure commitments from dealers concerning resale prices. In addition, the proposed order prohibits Nintendo from reducing the supply of products to any dealer or imposing different credit terms in whole or in part because of the dealer's resale pricing. The proposed order also prohibits Nintendo from requesting its dealers to report dealers who may sell any Nintendo product below any resale price suggested or established by Nintendo. The proposed order prohibits Nintendo for a period of 5 years from terminating any dealer because of the dealer's failure to adhere to any suggested minimum prices.
The agreement with the Federal Trade Commission stipulated that Nintendo would mail a $5 instant redemption certificate towards purchase of any Nintendo game cartridge to consumers who bought game machines between June 1st, 1988 and December 31st, 1990. Guarantee redemption of at least $5 million of the certificates, and agree to issue up to $25 million in coupons, if enough qualified consumers applied. Pay a total of $4.75 million to 39 states involved in the dispute to cover administrative and enforcement costs. Advise all Nintendo dealers in writing that they are free to sell game machines and cartridges and accessories at any price they choose. Include a disclaimer in promotional material that the suggested retail price is not mandatory, assuring dealers that they can set their own prices. Given Nintendo had a yearly revenue of around $4 billion, this was akin to a slap on the wrist for the gaming juggernaut. Nintendo's market rivals were quick to jump in with comments about how much they disliked the settlement that Nintendo was getting. Atari and Sega sent multi-page responses during the 60-day comment period, attacking Nintendo for its questionable practices, and affirming that they wanted the Federal Trade Commission to punish Nintendo more than the agreement stipulated. Some commenters going as far as to say, Nintendo is laughing all the way to the bank because it forces consumers to buy more Nintendo products in order to get any return.
Atari strongly believes that the order and settlement is insufficient in its scope, and it fails, where it should, to require direct remediation and clearly lacks any form of restitution for damages incurred. Further, the order fails, where it is critical to be recognized in the marketplace to require Nintendo to directly admit specific responsibility for its actions. Instead, it repeatedly states that Nintendo admits no liability or responsibility for its actions. Since the proposed consent decree does not impose any substantial penalty on Nintendo, it does not introduce and require strong remedies, and provides no admission of liability and absolutely no restitution to the public. It should not be entered, and the complaint should be filed.
Neither Sega nor anyone from whom the FTC seeks comment has sufficient financial information to evaluate this settlement. There has been no reference made by either the FTC or the Attorneys General to the potential impact of these settlements on Nintendo. It is almost certain that Nintendo, if not the states and the FTC as well, has computed the expected costs and benefits of both these settlements and has probably assessed the cost and probability of other state settlements. To Sega's knowledge, none of this information has been made public. If it is made public, it will be possible for others to accurately assess the impact on Nintendo and thus the fairness of these agreements to the consumer. It is imperative for the FTC to release this information and allow a further comment period. Without this information, Sega and others are incapable of completely and accurately assessing the fairness of this proposed agreement.
Even someone named James McAfee jumped in with his opinion about the settlement. But more about how he felt about video games in general.
All over America, Nintendo hardware, software, and accessories are reducing promising young muscles and brains to porridge. This may be one of those rare cases where restraint of trade should be not enjoined, but encouraged.
Whether this is John McAfee of internet fame is unknown, but it stands prominent as a part of the Federal Trade Commission comments. The Federal Trade Commission, after reviewing the comments from Sega and Atari, did not change their settlement deal with Nintendo, and allow the deal to progress, after which Nintendo quietly swept the event under the rug, and moved on with their new product releases and occasionally butting heads with retailers, although not to the same extent. Nintendo has always been a market force. The late 80s and early 90s were the time when Nintendo built their empire to last. Many of the tactics Nintendo learned from this period taught Nintendo to some extent to continue these practices later, but more so in their strict control of inventory. But this wouldn't be the last time Nintendo exerted its influence to maintain its place in the market. Thank you for watching Historicnerd today. If you enjoyed this episode, please go check out all the people who helped out with this video. I want to thank Russell's Gaming, Jimmy Hapa, Retro Man Cave, Junkball Media, Avalanche Jared, iRetroGamer, and Stika's Retro Corner very much for helping me out and do quotes for this video. All of them have fantastic channels that are somewhat retro-oriented. I highly suggest you go out and check out every single one of them. They're great channels. But I want to thank you for watching Historicnerd today. Hope you have a great evening, day, or night, or whatever it is you're doing. Bye.